everyone. Welcome to the GoRemote Summit. Today we have with us Muhammad Mahroz and Seun. So basically, before we start, I will introduce our topic. So our topic for the day is Beyond Boundaries, Navigating Cross-Cultural Remote Collaboration. Before we dive into the topic, I would love if you both introduce yourselves about yourselves and your background and experience in cross-cultural remote collaboration.
Okay. Do I go first?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go for it.
All right. So my name is Seun. I am the global head of people at Branch International. Branch International is a San Francisco-based fintech operating across three continents for now. We're in North America, we're in Africa, and we're also in Asia. I lead a team of close to 300 people across different countries, and I'm responsible for all people-related deliverables, from people strategy to global talent acquisition to performance management, employee engagement, learning and development, and more. I feel like I'm in a good position to be talking about the topic today because I do manage teams across different geographies, different time zones, different cultures, and I'm happy to be chatting with you today.
cool. Okay, so I am Muhammad Mahroz, and currently I'm working as CEO in letsremotify. Previously, I've been working as an engineer for like last 8 years throughout the companies all over the world, and yeah, I've been working remote for like last 8 years. So I also feel in a good position, and I have a feeling that it's gonna be a good communication going forward.
Great. It's lovely to have you both here, and thank you so much for being a part of the summit and our panel. So, I think without wasting more time, let's dive in and start a discussion about our topic. So, our topic being navigating cross cultural remote collaborations. Could you just tell me a little bit about what your experiences have been like and what are some common challenges that you've encountered while working with a cross cultural remote team? Either of you can go first.
I can go first. So, first challenge that we face, for example, when we are working remotely with people throughout different time zones and throughout different cultures, the first barrier is the language barrier because English is most commonly used and it's not the first language of many people. So that is the like first thing that we face, and the other thing is the time zone issues like there are stand-up meetings and there are other meetings, and it's sometimes very early for somebody and sometimes it's very late for some people, so we always have to find a balance. Yeah, these are the two common challenges that I've seen.
Definitely.
Yeah, so for me, I would say, of course, the biggest thing would be, just dealing with cultural norms. Like I've said, I work with a team of over 300 employees across different continents, with very different cultural norms. So that's like the biggest thing. Something else that we have to deal with is time zone. So I have an office in San Francisco, which is about 12 hours, 30 minutes different from, the time zone in India. And you have to collaborate with these teams, or, 8 hours different from Nigeria. And, you have meetings, you have all hands, you have tasks to work on. So of course there is dealing with time zones, there is dealing with cultural norms, there is also, even the adaptability. Some markets are obviously more advanced than others. So some people may have been working, like Muhammad was just saying, he's been working remotely for the past 8 years. But we have some of those markets where remote work really just hits them at the time of COVID. So they're not as adaptable to working remotely as folks who have been doing this for longer periods of time. And so it obviously was a lot more difficult for those who were just starting to work remotely than those who were used to it. So those are, a few of the challenges that I have seen with working remotely. But we've at every stage identifying what the challenge is and just figuring out how to fix the challenge has been one way to deal with that.
Right, definitely. I do believe that language barriers and all of these challenges are like one of the biggest hindrance in cross-cultural remote collaboration. But I do believe these are things which can be worked around and navigated around. So either of you, do you have like some example or some instance you can share with us where you faced a specific sort of a challenge with culture, with like a different cross-cultural remote collaboration, and how you had to basically change how you usually do things to accommodate the situation? Some example or some instance you remember?
Yeah, so I can think about a few instances. I would say, like, we had offices in Nigeria or in Kenya, and when people had to start working remotely fully, internet issues were the first thing that we had to deal with. Someone working in San Francisco didn't have to deal with internet, connectivity issues, but we had folks in, some of this market having to deal with internet connectivity issues. And so one way that we were able to deal with that was, give a stipend for folks to, one, set up the home office and, buy everything that they needed to be able to work remotely. So whether you needed to get a different ISP or have multiple ones, as backup, or you had to get a generating set, to deal with power issues. So each market had different challenges. So while internet connectivity might have been an issue in Nigeria, that wasn't an issue in, for someone working in San Francisco, for example. Also, you know, so that's one thing that I can think of. Another thing would be, when you talk about things like language barrier, one way that we've been able to deal with that is just from the beginning, from the onset, while you're recruiting. So if Hindi, for using India as an example, Hindi is the predominant language, but during recruiting, knowing that you'll be working with folks from all other markets who are predominant English speakers, we make sure that if you're joining from that market, you're at least able to speak Hindi and English. So it's not just, I'm not hiring people who can only speak Hindi, but I'm hiring those who can speak both Hindi and English and can communicate in that language. It may not be too fluent, but at least passable enough for you to be able to do your work and communicate with your colleagues without having any issues. So those are two examples that I can very quickly talk about.
Yeah, like if I try to give some examples, I remember I worked with a freelancer who was like based in some village in Nigeria, and that guy has to travel like multiple kilometers to actually access the internet. And we knew that, and we so I guess when working with people all around the world, you have to be a bit empathetic. You should know like what are the issues that your team is facing. So what we used to do with that guy is we used to make sure that 1 2 3 hours of internet that he had, we try to communicate the work for the whole day and everything. So that is one example, and the other one is that for the time zone issues. I remember in a company we had this culture. We were a startup at that time, and working at a fast pace. So whenever there comes a customer issue, what we used to do is just put an engineer with directly with the customer and put a customer representative and let them solve the issue. But when we expanded and we had the team in different time zones, like now when a customer is calling at their 4 p.m. and they are based in Santa Clara, that can be 4 a.m. for someone who's in, let's say, in Southeast Asia. So that was like already impossible for them to actually join that call. So actually, we had to develop better processes. So for that case, we implemented to like get all of the information, put that in a ticket, and then whoever picks that first solves that. So that again solves the problem in a day, but sometimes you just need better processes to be working with people around the globe. So,
Right, definitely. Those were some very good examples. So you guys did mention about how in those instances you were able to navigate through the problem and ensure effective communication. But obviously, in different situations, there are different measures that you have to take. But like, do you guys, over your experience, figure were able to figure out some best practices or tools that you recommend for improving communication in such teams, which you believe are like basically key elements that you need to ensure in order to have an effective communication to prevent the challenges that are common in cross-cultural collaboration?
Like first thing would be like just be empathetic. If you know you are talking to someone uh, who does not have a very strong command in English, just try to speak slow, a bit more clearer. Because if you have hired a person, you actually want to work with them. You need their technical capabilities. So just be empathetic. Try to make sure that they are understanding you. Give them some room for mistakes and everything. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Empathy is very important when you when you're working remote, because a lot of things get lost in translation when you're not in the same room with the person. So just being making sure that you are empathetic is great. But just coming from the other side of that, in terms of like tools and things that I have seen work very well. I think people underestimate the power of having a very, of using their calendars. I say to my people a lot, everything about my work you would find on my calendar. Even if I'm traveling, I would include little details like my transit time. And so, because I have a very structured calendar, it helps people that I'm working with to know what times I'm available. So if you send me a message in Slack, for example, and I don't respond and you check my calendar, you can see that, oh, this person is in a meeting or this person is traveling right now. And it helps to manage your expectations. So calendar is one tool that I know has worked really great for me. Just put everything in there. If you're on a break, put it there that you're on a break. So no one is expecting you to respond to messages. And if you're available, or you've RSVP'd for a meeting and you say you're going to be available, then be available. So just making use of your calendar. I think it's very helpful when you work remotely. Also, just managing expectations in terms of like response time. So as a company, what are your norms around responding to messages? So we use Slack a lot because instant messaging is kind of like being on WhatsApp or something. So what are your norms around that? So if you send me a message, do you have to wait for 24 hours before you expect a response? If you send me an email, do you have to wait for 2 days before you expect a response? So if everyone understands what the norms are around expectations, then people will work towards that. I know that I shouldn't leave my unread messages for 2 days or 3 days because someone is somewhere waiting for a response. So I would say calendaring is very important, and just managing those expectations around response times and work as asynchronously as possible, so that you don't feel like you're always stressed. You don't feel the pressure of having to be on top of something at every point in time.
I would just like
Definitely.
to, yeah, I would just like to add one more point. So just continuing that on the availability thing. So we actually face that problem a lot when because if somebody is sitting just right next to you, you can know if that person is not on their work machine. So like you cannot expect a reply instantly. But when you are working remotely, it's like very key thing to make sure that you are updating your status as real time as possible. And most of the companies, I guess everybody uses some kind of messaging app like Slack, then there is Team, and they integrate pretty well with Google Calendar and other calendar application, and they can automatically update your statuses. Like if you are in a meeting, in a conference meeting, and you cannot reply to your Slack messages, it's gonna update your status like on its own. So I guess again, when you're working remotely, the other people don't know what state you are in. So you just uh, if you just tell them that, if you just show that in some way, that is gonna be a like great thing. And the other thing that we have faced is like the time zone thing. So sometimes you cannot. It's like I have seen people who are online like 18 hours a day, and now I don't know if they're working 18 hours or like what hours should I expect a message to get a reply soon and like. there are kind of like discrepancies in there. So I think it's always better to just define your working hours, to define and just don't keep your messaging apps online. So everybody knows when to get a reply and expect that reply. So
Definitely. And just like following up on that, a calendar, literally, I live by my calendar because I don't think I would be able to function without my calendar because literally every part of my day is scheduled on that. It's very easy that way because it's not just easy for me. It obviously helps me to track what I'm supposed to do at every hour, but it's also easy because my team can also see that and they know that what slots am I available at and what slots are occupied, so that obviously when they need to approach me they can approach me accordingly, and it's just easier to navigate through the day with like a proper scheduled plan. But yes, moving forward from that, we did discuss how empathy and proper planning is very important. But I think one other thing that's very important in cross cultural collaboration is also building trust. It's a very vital element of any collaboration, in fact. So, just like a question on that, how do you go about building trust within a remote team where you have people from different backgrounds? And what strategies have you found effective in doing so and creating and fostering a strong bond and sense of unity within your remote teams?
So for me, like we know, trust is something that is earned. It's not a birthright, and so that's something that everyone needs to understand. And for me to trust you, you should have given me a reason to trust you, and that comes in different ways. Performance, for example. So when I give you a task, for example, are you able to deliver on that task without me having to follow up past the deadline? So from your performance, you're able to build trust with your team. Nobody wants a manager who, is always in their business or what are you doing per time. I've seen some managers say, tell me what you're doing every second of the day. I want to see your schedule, by the hour or by the minute. Nobody enjoys that. But sometimes, managers have to do that because the employee hasn't given them a reason to trust them. So I would say that, just making sure that your performance is top notch, that helps to build trust and earn trust. Another thing is also just understanding people. Muhammad has talked a lot about, empathy. You really need to understand the people that you work with, understand their cultural context, understand how they work. When I interview people, I always ask them, how do you like to be managed? And I pass that information on to their managers because no three persons are the same. So just understanding each person and knowing that each person is unique, but just generally having a sense of ownership. If you feel like this business is my business and it's not Mohammed's business, it's not Seun's business, it's not Sania's business, but it's my business. This is what pays my bills. This is where I get paid, and you have a sense of ownership, then you put everything into making sure that whatever it is that you do gets done properly. So you have to earn that trust, and that comes from doing. When people see that they can depend on you, when they see that they don't have to follow up past deadlines or follow up too much, then they know that this is someone who I can trust to, do what they say they will do. But if you don't do that, then it basically erodes trust, and that's when you have managers having to follow up and doing extra work. Another thing is that I've seen work very well is just having trackers, having a project management tool or having a tracker. So I'm not having to ping you 100 times a day to say, oh, where are you on this project? Where are you on that project? I just need to open the tracker and I can see what you're working on. I can see the progress. And that keeps me as a manager sane, knowing that okay, this person is doing all of these things. So those are two things that I would mention, and I'll let Mohammed do the rest of the talking.
yeah, you explained it pretty well. Just a couple of points that I would like to add. So trust, I guess that goes both ways. So uh, what I have found useful, especially for the deadlines part, like I personally, rather than just imposing deadlines on people, I usually try to get the deadlines from them. Like always, I always try to work with them and find a deadline that we both mutually agree upon. I guess that creates a sense of ownership in people. Like if somebody tells me you have to complete that in 2 days, I'll be reacting to that in a different way. Versus if I say like I am going to complete that in 2 days, I'll be reacting to that in a different way. So I guess that is one thing that I have always found useful. Like both people give the deadlines of their own work, and yeah, that's what I wanted to write.
Definitely. And I believe that obviously when you are able to set your own deadlines, there's better accountability as well. Because when you're told that you have to do something at a certain time, you do have the option of later saying that, oh, the deadline was very unreasonable and it was very difficult. But when you set your own deadlines, that's when you commit to something and you can be held accountable for it. So it's, and if you're able to set your own deadlines and commit to those, then I think that's a very important aspect that can help in building a strong relationship of trust and unity within a team.
And one more thing, like communication is very important in that. Like it is not humanly possible to give accurate deadlines for like every task that you are doing. It's not humanly possible. So there will be roadblocks, there will be hurdles. So if we are proactive about them, like let's say I've given deadline for a task, like I'll complete that in 3 days, and after 1.5 day, I got to know like there is one other thing that I like missed when I was calculating the deadline. The best way of action would be to just communicate that to the direct stakeholders. Like, this is something that we missed. I guess that's going to add X more hours or X more days to that task. And yeah, and that is properly that's the proper way to do. And what I have seen, especially in remote workers, is they just want to stick to the deadlines, and they think like it's not humanly possible to get away from the deadline. So it is possible. Like
Yeah.
you have to communicate it well, because we all know, like if I have given somebody a task, if they come up with a proper explanation, but this is why it's getting late, uh, that is the way to go. So we just need to understand that, and we need to be more proactively communicating. I guess that also like cultivates the culture of trust. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Proactive communication.
Let's move on to a new side of the topic now. So, we did discuss how this potential problems and how we can overcome those. But now let's talk about leveraging that diversity for innovation. So, obviously, having a cross cultural team with such diversity and such unique people can be a very big advantage and can be used by a company to their advantage for innovation and so many other potential benefits. So, my question here is that in what ways does cross cultural diversity contribute to innovation and problem solving within a remote team?
Yes. So I'll give a very straightforward and simple example. Let's say you have a product that is being used by people all around the world, right? Now, let's say you have people with a single religion from a single country working from a single place. They have a religious holiday, let's say a 3 day holiday, and something comes up. What are you going to do? You'll be fine, right? Now, if you have people from cross culture, you have people from like 10 different countries following multiple religions, and they have their working days will be overlapped. So whenever there comes a problem, at least somebody will be available. So this is something that like big companies and global and worldwide companies they leverage a lot. So that is something that helps us leverage the benefits of you want to
Yeah, it also just helps you avoid groupthink, you know. So same set of people thinking the same way because you're exposed to the same things in your environment, that kind of affects the way you think about things. But when you have people from diverse cultural backgrounds, you're able to diversify the way that you think. So I like the fact that this just helps you avoid groupthink. and expands, how you think about problems, how you think about solutions, how you think about products. It's very interesting if you sit in a room with people from different cultures and backgrounds, and you're trying to work at something. The kind of ideas that come at you, your mind is blown, and that's because these people are exposed to different things, and so the way that they think is very different. So I think that that's like the biggest, for me, that's the biggest takeaway here. It just helps to expand the way that you think, and of course, the business is better off for it. You're also able to, hire people with different skill sets, and that helps your business, that helps your product. Some people are, maybe you're coming from a community that is more book smart. There's some communities that, you want to do your first degree, your second degree, your third degree. Meanwhile, maybe you have another community where they have more hands-on experience. Imagine the combination of those two folks. Someone has like the book knowledge, the other person has the hands-on knowledge, and they're coming together. It just becomes explosive. So that's one area where I think that's, this is changing the way that businesses think, the way that businesses approach solutions or dish out products these days.
Yeah, and when people, obviously, people from different backgrounds, people from different ethnicities, they've had different sorts of experiences, and everyone would bring a very new perspective to the table, which can be very innovative for the company and bring so many new ideas. But what I also think is that within those perspectives and new ideas, it could be a cause for conflict as well, because definitely when you have so many diverse ideas and a variety of different type of people, there's also the potential of conflict, because there would be many instances and many things where they will not agree with one another. So how do you think that we could navigate around that and ensure that those differences can be used as a benefit and as a way of growing rather than something which can be a source of conflict?
So I think that conflict is inevitable anywhere, even in even in the family setting. There will always be conflicts, and it just makes for, better better people at the end of the day. You don't allow the conflicts define you. Uh, there's something I always say, you focus on the issue and not the person. So if everybody thinks that way, what I'm focusing on is the issue and not the person. I have, like, at my company, we have, one of our values is assume positive intent. So when somebody says something to you, even when you feel like, oh, this person has done something wrong, the first thing is to assume that that person's intent is positive and not negative. So those are some guidelines. Um, in dealing with conflicts. The other thing is just understanding. Like, there is a place for understanding when you work remotely, and you're working with people across different cultures. So I need to understand your culture. If I work with you, I need to understand: are you coming from a high context culture or a low context culture? If I say to you, you're wearing a white shirt, it really means you're wearing a white shirt. But some people say, the shirt you're wearing, it's not black, it's not brown, it's somewhere in between black and brown. Use so many words to describe one thing while someone else was, it's very direct. So just understanding the cultural context of people that you work with will also help you avoid sometimes, these conflicts. Because you know how to communicate with them, you understand how they communicate, you understand how they like to do things, and so whatever happens, you're able to work within that context. So for me, I would say, conflict is inevitable, but how you handle it is like the biggest thing. Just know that it's really about what you're discussing. It's not about the person. The other part is understanding the culture, the cultural context, and just working within that.
That's a very healthy way of thinking about conflict, because obviously, people, when you think conflict, you have a very negative idea attached to it. But a conflict can actually be very beneficial as well, because with conflict, obviously, you're conflicted about a certain thing, but then that's also a way to find out ways to solve that conflict and get to know how you can work around such a conflict, which can be very beneficial in the future and actually affect your personal growth and even your professional growth. So that's a very good perspective and a good way of looking at conflict. Mehroz, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a saying like it's never your way or my way. We can just combine it to a highway. So uh, one person cannot always be 100% right. If there are multiple people trying to own the thing and trying to give their input, we can always, if everybody has the best interest of the product in mind, the best interest of the company in mind, we can always just pick the good things from everybody's solutions and try to make a new solution that is close to perfection. So that's one thing. It always keep the interest of the company, keep the interest of the product in your mind as a top priority. Like Sean mentioned earlier, like it's not my product, it's not your product, it's everybody's product. So if everybody's thinking like that, then of course they'll always be collaborating to make the best decision. And yeah, that's basically it.
Perfect. So let's now talk about differences in work style. So obviously, everyone in a different area, a different time zone would have a very different work style. And when you're in an office setting, obviously you are following the work style of the office. But when you're in a remote setting, you have the liberty to set your own work style. But obviously, when everyone's in such different settings, you have to find a way to work around that as well. So have you used any technology or tools which you believe have assisted you in managing time zone disparities and work style differences? Some tools or technological tools, basically, which have been very useful in this.
I think, of course, these kind of like virtual meeting system is the first thing that we need to have when you're working with people all around the globe. And then again, we have to find out some. I think uh, everybody should have at least 3 to 4 hours of overlap, if possible, because that helps a lot. Then they can, continue with their things in the hours that are not overlapping. But if you're working in a team in the same company, you need to communicate, you need to collaborate at some point, which is very important. So uh, of course these visual meeting tools are very important, and then we have tools like Slack and Teams for instant communication. I guess these are very important too.
Yeah, so for me, I've talked about my love for calendars before. So, that's really helpful. But I would say the thing that is key here is flexibility. Just not being rigid is super important. You need to be flexible. Uh, I would take myself as an example. I work across, multiple time zones. Some days, maybe I'm up at 3 a.m. working. The beauty is that I don't have to be up at 9 a.m. to join another meeting. My time is that flexible. So I can work pretty late, but know that I can sleep in the next day and be rejuvenated before I have to get back into work. So flexibility is very key. Um, just understanding people also is super important. Like I've said, I have differences in time zone differences as much as 2 hours 30 minutes. Some people have 2 hours in between. Some have 4 hours in between, and we do have global meeting, so like an all hands where everybody needs to join. So you have to be able to compromise. So it's not just one country that's at the receiving end every time. So if I'm going to sacrifice my dinner time, then maybe you can also sacrifice your breakfast time, and not say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't take any meeting, at 7 a.m. in the morning. If I'm able to take a meeting at 9 p.m., then maybe you can also take a meeting at 7 a.m. Some are in the middle and they have the best of both worlds. But for those at the extremes, you'll have to be willing to compromise. So it's not just one person or one city at the receiving end every time. For example, you can rotate it. So if this month your meeting falls within a time that is uh, you know, more inconvenient for someone in India. Maybe next time it's more inconvenient for the people in San Francisco, and the next time it's more inconvenient for the person in Kenya. So you can rotate that and just, be, be flexible about it, be considerate, and one person should not always be at the receiving end of, after all, it's not their fault that we have these time zone differences. So just being very considerate of everyone is important.
Yes, finding a middle ground is definitely what keeps it a healthy collaboration. And I love the idea of a rotational compromise where one person has to compromise at one instance and another person at the other time. So that you ensure that it's not just one person. Maybe because, for example, if there's like 10 to 15 people in a similar time zone and there's only one person in a different time zone, it's more likely that that one person would have to maybe sacrifice their breakfast or dinner time in order to accommodate everyone else because they're the majority group. But the rotational idea would ensure that it's not just one person taking all the burden and everyone gets a chance to a like keep their time for themselves and also maybe spare some time where they are making a compromise for their team as well. Remote work has come a very long way, and I believe COVID had a very major hand to play with the situation. I think pre-COVID, remote collaboration and working remotely was a thing, but not to the extent which it is now. So it has come a long way, but definitely there's a long way to go as well. So I would like to know, what do you see are the as the future trends or developments that might come up in cross-cultural remote collaboration, and maybe what are the potential changes you would wish to see, or like new trends or new developments that you wish should be incorporated and can be a very useful incorporation into remote work.
Okay, so for me, I think I I think that there's going to be a lot more automation. We've been used to doing things a certain way, and even if it's an inefficient way, people have just been doing it for ages, and you continue to do that. But with the advent of new technologies, there's AI, with machine learning. I don't want to delve into all of that. I'm sure Mohammed will have more more to say about that. But with the advent of all of these things, um, efficiency, I think I look forward to a lot more efficiency in the workplace, and that comes from things like automation, efficiency from you. These days, I still find people who say, "Oh, I can't work outside my office." I see a world where you're able to work from anywhere because things are now cloud based. You can collaborate on different things because these things are we are using cloud based tools. So that's where I see us, just going into a lot more automation. So redundant processes will be cut out. So there's a lot more automation. There is a lot more efficiency. There are no location barriers. You're able to work from anywhere at any time and do anything because all of these things are now cloud based. And those are just a few things that I would talk about. Oh, also, more distributed teams. So because they are now able to hire from anywhere in the world. Your team is a lot more distributed and diverse, and there's just a richness of the work that you then are able to get from that diverse team.
Yep, of course. So I guess we started the culture of remote work like 5, 6 years back, and then COVID came and just put it on steroids, and everybody was uh, attracted towards remote culture. And then we found out the benefits of remote work. So they say the talent is equally distributed throughout the world. Like there might be somebody who is sitting, let's say, in a village, and and he might be the smartest person uh, in the whole continent. So remote works enables us to find these gems of the people and get them integrated in our company. And the other thing is, these people come at a very low cost too, because there are the economic differences in different countries and everywhere. Like I've seen difference in developer prices. developers who are of equal skill set, developers who are like equally smart, and the pay scale has sometimes 50% difference, sometimes 80% difference. So it allows the companies to take leverage to get the best possible team uh, in a limited budget too, if they can. And then again, it gives you the flexibility to get people, so you have people working for you in 24 hours a day, right? So there are multiple advantages of like going remote. And again, we are thinking of going carbon free in like next 20-30 years. So just imagine if we just remove the traffic of people going to work every day. That's going to solve most of our fuel problem, most of our carbon problem, most of our roads problem. So it's a new concept. We just need to adopt to it. We just need to think, like, yeah, things can work that way. And I think again there then comes the most important thing that I personally find missing in people who are working in from different countries, from different cultures. We need to define a basic set of ethics, a basic set of remote work ethics that everybody has to agree upon and everybody has to follow. Because if we have a set of ethics and we have a set of process that everybody is following, that is going to cultivate the culture of trust. Like if I know that if I need an urgent task and somebody who's sitting at a 10-hour difference from me is gonna get that done whenever I want, and that person is responsible, I'll be like 100% okay hiring that person. So again, I think it's gonna take at least maybe 3 4 more years for people, for employers to understand that things can work in a remote culture, and also for people who are working to educate themselves, to train themselves to a certain set of ethics. Like this is how we need to work. These are the responsibilities that we have to take. This is how we need to take the ownership. So when we talk about like proactively setting our status, like uh, if I'm commuting and if it's the standard time, it's fine if I join from a phone. And it's okay. I myself I sometimes eat in not listening to you before I actually speak at something. I can just eat while you're speaking and listening. That is fine. So we just need to go out of some that culture, some things, some concept that we have already learned. We just need to unlearn them. We need to move forward.
Definitely. And when you talk about remote work ethics, I think that's something which is very important because when you have certain ethics and certain rules to abide by, it just makes it easier for everyone, and they have certain guidelines which they have to follow, so that it's easier for you to track them as well and easier for them to know how they have to navigate through a different culture of remote work in a different environment in a different setting. But just talking a bit more about the remote work ethics, what do you think are some key features which need to be included in a, let's say, remote work ethics or rules which do and keep for your teams?
I guess my top three will be communication, empathy, and honesty. You have these three things, you can be a perfect remote worker.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, so I think that when it comes to remote work, people need to be. He talked about communication, accountability. Accountability, I think for me, is very key, because when you're accountable first to yourself, then like there's no limits to what you can do. So accountability for me is very important. Communication, I like to say over communicate, because when you over communicate or when you think you're over communicating, you're actually just adequately communicating. So over communicate. Let people know what's happening at every point in time. There's going to be an issue, talk about it. So accountability for me, and then of course communication. Those two things are very key in helping to manage expectations when you work remotely.
Definitely. I like the idea of over communication because I myself am someone who sometimes thinks that I do over communicate, maybe, or maybe am I sharing too much or more than what I should be. But that's a very fun perspective. I like it that way. So I think we have covered a lot about remote collaboration and cross-cultural teams. Just to wrap up the conversation, I would love if you could share a piece of advice or some key takeaways that you think would be essential or something people should remember for basically individuals and organizations who are aiming to strive or excel in cross-cultural remote collaboration.
So for me, I would say plan. If you fail to plan, then you're basically planning to fail. Plan. A lot of people, just go through it like business as usual. They wing it. Let me use that term. Like, I'll just wing it. What's the worst that can happen? But you do need to plan. Um, and the other part of that is you need to be flexible. So at every point in time, when something is happening and you feel like, oh, I've solved this, something else can spring up, and you need to be flexible enough to be able to deal with that. So I'll give an example. We moved into remote work. Everyone is working remotely. Like, everybody should be happy. What's the worst that can happen? All of a sudden, people are saying, I want to see my colleagues. I want to be able to come into the office. Okay, we have an office if you want to come in. You need to be flexible enough to listen to the people, that you work with, your employees. What is it that they want? Um, or people are not able to have, people start saying, my back aches, I'm not sitting well. You find a solution. Okay, you get a work from home stipend to have a home office. Or something else springs up, my mental health is suffering. You figure out a benefits to help deal with that. So you have to be very adaptable and flexible when you're working remotely, because something will always come up. Even when you think you've given employees what they want, something else will spring up. So you need to plan, you need to be adaptable, you need to be flexible, and just, be very ready. You need to be very agile, using that word, you need to be very agile. Otherwise, when you think you've got it, then something goes wrong and all of a sudden you don't have it anymore. So that would be my advice, both, on the employer side and on the employee side. Make sure you plan, don't just wing it. Be adaptable, be flexible, and be very agile.
I think Sean explained it pretty well. There is not much room for adding something to it. But yeah, if I just try to put it all in one sentence, be communicative, uh, and own the product. Everybody has to own everything of the product, every part of the product, and just tell people what you are doing. You might It might seem like they don't want to know it, but actually they want. In the subconscious, they want to know what my colleague is at right now. So if it would be wise to throw a message right now, when can I expect a response and everything? And if people are dependent on you, just try to get that resolved uh, as fast as possible. So respect everybody's time. Everybody's time is precious, and yeah.
That sounds lovely. I believe this has been a very insightful talk. I don't know about everyone else, but this has definitely brought out a very fresh perspective for me and a very new way to look at things, because in our everyday life we're working, we're collaborating with so many people, and there are those tiny things which we don't even notice throughout the day, little moments to celebrate, or some things which we think of as such huge problems, but they're actually really not. They can be solved with just a little communication, a little planning, just little things which you make sure can take your work and your teams a very long way ahead as well. It's been a wonderful conversation, Mahroz. Thank you so much for your time. And I believe this has been a very insightful conversation and a very good perspective on cross cultural collaboration. And I'm sure there's a long way to go to have more collaboration and more teamwork and more advancements in remote work. But definitely, if we have more people like you with such good perspectives and good ideas about this, we can definitely go a very good way towards this as well. Any last points or any last words you would like to say before we end this talk?
Thank you very much. This has been it's been a very great chat. I'm glad that I could share. I would say, remote work continues to evolve. So keep learning. No one knows it all. So keep learning. There are always several resources, several seminars, several talks, several books. Just continue to learn, continue to evolve. I am a big proponent of remote work, so I'm looking forward to how this continues to evolve in the world of work. Thank you for everything, Sonia.
Yep, same for me. Like, thank you for this, for arranging this, and yeah, I love talking to you guys. I learned new perspectives of how to look at things too, and yeah, I'm happy that I was able to share.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you both at the GoRemote Summit.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Try